Family and fellow soldiers, I'm the Professor, and this is the Moment of Truth.
A new documentary short premiering tonight on MSNBC explores the 2018 recall of California Judge Aaron Persky, who lost his bench after handing down a sentence deemed too lenient by many in the infamous sexual assault case involving Stanford swimmer Brock Turner. While Santa Clara voters recalled Judge Persky by a 23-point margin, questions still linger about the effect of his ouster on criminal sentencing. Here's a scene from The Recall Reframed.
The judge in this case had the legal right to make the decision that he made. I think that it was the wrong decision, but the law allowed him to make that decision. What if that judge is deciding whether these abortion regulations are lawful? And the judge is in a place where a lot of people don't like abortion. Do you want the judge to say, I'm living in Kansas, and so I know what people here think, so I'm going to do what they want? You want the judge to follow the law.
Joining me now is Harvard Law lecturer and Emmy-nominated director of The Recall Reframed, Rebecca Richmond-Cohen. Rebecca, thank you for coming to the Sunday show. What drew you to this story, and why did you want to explore the recall election of Judge Persky?
Thanks so much, Jonathan. This film felt like an important opportunity to correct a media narrative that had gone wrong. At the time, activists were outraged about the lenient sentence, about the prevalence of sexual violence in this country and our woefully inept responses to it. And they were angry about racial disparities in sentencing, that a white privileged college kid would have gotten a different sentence than a person of color or someone who was low income. And I believe all of those things are absolutely right to be outraged about. But I don't think the recall was the right response to it. And what we know now is that in the 6 weeks following the announcement of the recall, sentences increased 30% across the entire state of California. And that did not affect the Brock Turners of the world. That disproportionately affected low income and people of color, the exact people that proponents of the recall were claiming to serve. So I think this is a real moment to step back and reflect and reframe our conversation about what happens when we demand long prison sentences as a response to sexual violence.
Talk about the tool that keeps on shilling. Jonathan putting on his cape art is selling the soap on something I've mentioned before, punishing judges who refuse to punish the guilty. NBC is back playing the sad violins for the disgraced crooked Judge Aaron Persky. You'll recall that former Judge Aaron Persky was the California jurist who decided to let a man who he knew was guilty as hell of rape leave court with just a 6-month slap on the wrist sentence, basically practically no time at all for what he did. And just as egregiously, he decided in court that he was going to express sympathy for the rapist, saying that he didn't want to ruin the rapist's life. He didn't have anything to say sympathetic to the victim. Now, what happened was that a university professor decided to lead the effort to have Aaron Persky recalled. And it worked. He was held accountable for his flagrant ignoring of the law and refusal to uphold his oath of office. That was the right outcome. The public was jubilant, but the white media was scared and furious. You can't have the judges whose job it is to let certain offenders go scot-free intimidated or think that they'll be punished by the voters. Oh, they need a counter-narrative, stat. Now, I've done a number of videos on this very YouTube channel about this exact issue with Aaron Persky and others. And there has been a lot of white media outlets that were pushing this phony hysteria that, oh, the judges, they're going to be locking people up left, right, and center, especially you black people, they'll be coming after you next. You can see those videos on this very YouTube channel for a closer, in-depth look. But the fear the white media has also goes beyond the rapists who you know are guilty. There's also judges who refuse to punish the police who kill as well. Remember, all the years the white media lectured us and condescended to the public about how it's impossible to punish the police, qualified immunity, and a bunch of other legal lies. And then the police began getting convicted. First slowly, now regularly. But even with the regular convictions now, we've seen that it's the judges who are refusing to actually hand down sentences that are in accordance with the law. Instead, the judges doing the absolute opposite. They're going, well, we know what the law says, but as far as we're concerned, we think 6 months, no time. And they're not doing it because that's the law, but because there's no mandatory sentence for these murders with badges. But as I'll explain later, even a mandatory sentence won't stop a crooked judge who's determined to see a guilty criminal go free. As soon as talk of recalling Judge Persky began, the white media immediately went into hysterics, pushing the propaganda that if Persky was recalled, it would lead to a tsunami of judges terrified to not give harsh sentences because of the cruel, unfeeling voters. But the white media went way beyond that. They lectured the public and condescended to the American people by saying that the judges had a right to legally let a rapist go. That Aaron Persky's ruling may have been unpopular, but it was still legal. Now that's lying by omission. As we've seen in the cases of police who murder black people, judges can set aside guilty verdicts. Not because it's the law, but because the judge has the ability to just decide for themselves, well, here's what the sentence is, and I'm just throwing out the case, or I'm going to set it aside, or say time given, or say probation, or whatever. The judge just decides, well, there will be no prison time. And they're not doing this because that's what the law prescribes. Notice the white media's weasel words.
The judge in this case had the legal right to make the decision that he made.
They don't say, well, this is what the legal sentence was. They said the opposite. They said, okay, well, yeah, we know what the legal sentence was, but, it's still legal for the judge to do that. The law said clearly what Brock Turner should have gotten. Judge Persky decided that he didn't like the law. He didn't follow the law. He ignored it. Brock Turner raped that girl and was let go in 2015, and Aaron Persky got himself recalled and sent packing shortly thereafter. So, how much of a chilling effect did the recall of Aaron Persky have? Not much, because when Drew Clinton held a pillow over a girl's face and raped her, the judge on that case said in open court the only thing he cared about was Drew Clinton's well-being. That was just last year. So 8 years after the Brock Turner fiasco, after Aaron Persky was recalled, 6 years after the Me Too movement began, we see these judges have gotten bolder about protecting certain people from legal consequences. They're not intimidated, not even in the slightest, perhaps because they know that there's a duplicitous white media like NBC that isn't going to tell the public what the judges are doing. In the case of Drew Clinton, the judge himself said in open court that he didn't like what the law said. He didn't say that he didn't know it. He didn't say, well, this is what the law says. He says he doesn't like what the law said. And that he knew full well that the law required prison time. It was a mandatory sentence for the offense that Drew Clinton committed. But the judge, sounding like a member of the defense team or like the white media, said he wasn't going to do that because of the rapist's age, etc. Oh, he's so young and, well, he doesn't have any other rapes that we know of on his record, so... And then the judge admitted that he had already gamed out what he was going to do to make sure that this rapist got to walk. He admitted that he knew exactly what sentence the law required: prison. He then said that, well, if I rule that the sentence was unconstitutional, well, that decision will just be reversed on appeal. So to make sure that this rapist gets the outcome I want him to have, I'm just going to simply say that the people failed to make their case. He's saying this in open court. He's admitting, you made the case, he's guilty, I know what the law says has to be done, but I don't like it, so I'm just going to lie. I'm just going to lie and say that you failed to make your case. Even though he knows that they did. He's admitting it. You made your case, but I'm going to say that you didn't anyway. Usually when someone is plotting to break the law, they don't admit it in open court. But this judge did, told everyone that he agreed Drew Clinton was a rapist and that he knew what the law required for this offense, but his own personal biases was justification enough for him to ignore the law. It was a rinse and repeat of what happened with the Brock Turner trial. Don't let the white media's weasel words fool you. When NBC says that the judge's ruling in the Brock Turner trial was legal, what they mean is simply that the judge has the ability to throw out verdicts and such, but that doesn't mean that it was in accordance with the law. Judges have the ability to dismiss any case and to give any offender no time because they're allowed to set the sentence. But as we saw with Drew Clinton, even in cases where the state sets a mandatory sentence, these judges simply decide that they won't allow the offender to be punished. And as for that whole canard about, oh, well, judge has been handing down harsher sentences since the Aaron Persky recall, I don't know where the hell this is going on at. It looks no worse than it's ever been. Sounds to me like some more white media weasel words. NBC in particular have been tying themselves in knots trying to spread propaganda that if judges get punished for ignoring the law, while they try to give certain people genetic immunity from the law, then, well, they're going to be locking up black people left, right, and center. They're already doing that now. The fear-mongering from NBC is clear. You have to allow judges to ignore the law for non-black offenders, or else. Why didn't that woman, by the way, make a documentary about the racially discriminatory sentencing that she herself says takes place? Instead, she gives nothing but a naked defense of a lawless, biased, crooked judge, and that society needs to understand that the judges should be able to ignore the law whenever it suits them. You know, I gotta wonder what sexual offenders at NBC have gotten into trouble that they feel the constant need to stick up for judges who let rapists off the hook. Maybe Matt Lauer's trying to get his old job back or something, but don't kid yourself. NBC could care less about the judges. It's about protecting the criminals. Certain criminals, anyway. Juries are no longer dependable to let the criminals off the hook, so the judges have become their last ditch, and they gotta protect them. Maybe if we're lucky, MSNBC will feature a documentary someday about how many times judges have set aside or thrown out cases for defendants who were clearly guilty. Though from what we've seen the last several years, some of the NBC staff who would make a piece about that subject would have to do it from their prison cells. Good day, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors: Gordon Gates, Edmund Ramsey, Nora Brown, Fred Williams, and Kevin Evans. Salute to them, and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.